What if I told you that Squidward wasn't actually out to get SpongeBob, but that he was actually hired by SpongeBob's parents to protect him? In your typical SpongeBob episode, you can count on a few things. SpongeBob's hyperactivity will lead him to do something reckless, wild, and probably dangerous. Patrick will be a lovable idiot, and Squidward will make clear that he endorses absolutely nothing about whatever it is SpongeBob is doing that week. There's this theory online that claims SpongeBob's parents met Squidward shortly after he was laughed out of high society and at a low point in life, giving him a huge amount of money to get back on his feet and asked him to spend the rest of his life looking after their son. Now, on the surface, none of that makes a lot of sense given how strongly Squidward hates SpongeBob. Why would he dedicate his life to that? But before we get into how it makes sense, we need some context. Let's start with Squidward. Throughout the show, we get glimpses into Squidward's life before SpongeBob came along, and it seems like Squidward comes from an extremely privileged upper-class life. Not only is he a classical music fan and a classically trained clarinet player, both of which are strongly associated with the upper classes, but he was also a student at what seems to be one of the most elite private schools on the ocean floor. I mean, he attended classes with Squilliam Fancyson,
From band class?
Hello, peasants.
who is basically the classiest guy with 8 legs. The show never really explains why, but it's clear that Squidward's life did not turn out the same way as Squilliam's. I mean, Squilliam is constantly bragging about his multi-millionaire lifestyle and his private yacht, private lake, private island, casino, and his giant tower, some of which we see in the show. But then Squidward has a house, a clarinet, and a job at Bikini Bottom's cheapest burger shack.
May I resume my minimum wage duties?
All of this tells us that Squidward had the potential to become the elite snob he always thought he could be, but he just kind of botched it. Honestly, all of this just makes it seem even more likely that Squidward got kicked out of high society. And it explains why he is the way that he is, and why every time Squilliam turns up, he just goes to these insane lengths to try and be better than him. Now, SpongeBob, on the other hand, is way more simple in his motivations. It's a pretty common theory that SpongeBob has some kind of disability that prevents him from doing advanced or complicated daily tasks, perhaps explaining why he's never really moved beyond flipping burgers. Actually, SpongeBob shows a lot of symptoms of ADHD, which include being unable to sit still, being unable to concentrate on tasks, excessive physical movement, excessive talking, acting without thinking. I mean, I could go on, but I think you get the point. What I'm saying is that SpongeBob is a handful. He's extremely chaotic and hyperactive at all times, so it makes total sense that his parents would be unable to deal with him on a daily basis, and why they would look at someone more straight-laced and mature like Squidward as a good role model. But let's take a look at an episode featuring SpongeBob's parents and see if any of this makes sense. In the episode Ma and Pa's Big Hurrah, SpongeBob's parents come to visit his house for the first time after their own avocado rots to the ground. SpongeBob's immediate reaction to hearing his parents are coming is to totally remove any trace of his usual chaotic existence and adopt a more mature and less fun personality. Now, the episode never says this, but he's basically acting just like Squidward, avoiding any kind of reckless fun in favor of more mature discussions and activities. So it really seems like SpongeBob thinks his parents want him to be more like Squidward. Anyway, his parents, who seem like very mature, stern people, arrive at SpongeBob's house and are kind of disappointed that their usually chaotic son is behaving so well. They end up sneaking out in the night to have a fun time, and when SpongeBob finds out about it, he scolds them just like Squidward does to him. So his parents force him to come along, but SpongeBob clings to this grown-up personality until they finally have enough of him. Realizing that his parents are basically having a midlife crisis and just want to have a good time, SpongeBob lets loose and his hyperactivity comes back. He bounces around his house and ends up basically destroying it beyond repair. After exhausting himself, SpongeBob lands in his parents' arms and they decide to bring him home to their rebuilt avocado until his pineapple grows back. As they walk away, they say,
I wonder when he'll really grow up and be mature.
Hopefully not too soon, am I right there?
Now, what's really interesting about this is how terrified SpongeBob's parents are when he's bouncing around the house as though they're not sure what he's going to do next. I think this is the kind of behavior that probably would have led them to hire Squidward to handle him, hoping he could somehow mature into someone more grown up. Actually, a lot of this episode really backs up the theory. SpongeBob's parents are not great with him, they're pretty selfish and basically ignore him for their own interests throughout. Even their final words contradict one another, creating a situation where SpongeBob can't really win. He's always going to be too hyperactive or too grown up. So maybe Squidward is a better, more stable presence for SpongeBob. But Squidward openly hates SpongeBob, or at least that's what he says at every chance he gets. And if that's the case, it makes no sense why he would ever agree to spend the rest of his life looking out for him. Well, would you believe me if I told you that Squidward actually loves SpongeBob so much that he could just never bring himself to leave? In the episode Squidville, Squidward finally moves out of his house after SpongeBob and Patrick push him over the edge using reef blowers to suck the windows and doors of his home. He moves into this gated community called Tentacle Acres where everybody is exactly like him in both personality and looks, which honestly is a little weird and creepy, but hey, it's a cartoon. Anyway, it doesn't take long before Squidward starts to grow tired of his new paradise. He hates that everyone is so stuck up, and he gets no joy out of doing everything he wants all the time. Eventually, he causes chaos with the reef blower, just like SpongeBob did, and leaves his new home. The episode suggests that Squidward leaves Tentacle Acres because he can't stand being around people just like him. But I think it's also because his life has no meaning without SpongeBob. While it seems like Squidward is just mean toward him, a lot of what he says is usually aimed at preventing SpongeBob from doing something stupid and hurting himself, which almost always happens anyway. So it makes sense that Squidward would think of himself like a big brother, especially if he spent his whole life looking after him. The episode Dying for Pie also backs this up. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs forcing his employees to take part in an employee brotherhood day, where all employees give one another gifts. But Squidward doesn't appreciate SpongeBob's kind of unhinged eyelash sweater and decides to just get a random pie from some pirates outside.
Oh, these aren't homemade. They were made in a factory. A bomb factory.
Ignoring their warning that the pie contains a bomb. It's not until Mr. Krabs is almost blown to pieces that Squidward realizes they weren't kidding, but by that point SpongeBob says he ate the whole thing. Convinced SpongeBob has a matter of hours to live, Squidward vows to make them the best hours of his life by showering him in love. Honestly, this is the most caring that I think I've ever seen Squidward act towards SpongeBob in the entire show. He's so determined to make these final hours meaningful that he even puts himself through a lot of pain, allowing SpongeBob to perform open heart surgery on him just because SpongeBob says he wants to do it, which is kind of weird and threatening, but also pretty sweet. Ultimately, Squidward discovers that SpongeBob didn't actually consume. He's half angry that SpongeBob would do such a thing, but also kind of relieved. Then SpongeBob throws the bomb pie at his face and causes a major nuclear explosion in the middle of the ocean because he just has no self-control. This whole episode is designed to show that Squidward genuinely cares for SpongeBob more than he would ever openly admit, and that even when SpongeBob is facing potential death, he feels an obligation to make sure that his friend's final hours are the best they could possibly be. His constant efforts to try and protect SpongeBob from worrying about what's going to happen are weirdly moving, and if he truly is trying to make sure his final moments are going to be happy. He even starts crying in the seconds before he thinks SpongeBob is gone. I think this really shows that Squidward is not a bad guy. Whatever he's been through and whatever snobbish tendencies he has, he doesn't want SpongeBob to be hurt. He would rather suffer through a difficult or painful experience just so SpongeBob can be happy and not have to worry or struggle. So basically, he's being the parental figure that SpongeBob doesn't have, and he's living up to this potential deal he made with them to look out for their boy. Now, the theory isn't perfect, and there are some hiccups in the timeline of the show. The spin-off Kamp Koral suggests that SpongeBob and Squidward met as kids, which doesn't really align with this theory at all unless you want to believe that SpongeBob's parents were just offering random kids money to be his friend. Maybe there's something in that. But honestly, I think you could just look at Kamp Koral's story and think of it as something that never actually happened. What if the whole thing was something made up by Squidward and SpongeBob's parents to protect him from the truth? The theory suggests that SpongeBob's parents paid off his impressive multi-floor home, which makes a lot of sense given that SpongeBob slaves away at a burger-flipping job for a penny-pinching crab. But SpongeBob would never know that they did that. He thinks that he made all of this himself, that he built his own life through pure hard work and and relentless, hyperactive positivity. If he found out that his parents had basically just bought his whole life and lied to him, and that one of his best friends was there to repay a debt to them, it would crush him. So I think it could be suggested that the Kamp Koral story is a convenient false memory designed to help SpongeBob believe that he and Squidward have always been natural friends, and to give him a sense of independence in the world. And honestly, having seen how sketchy their parenting is, I would not put it past SpongeBob's parents to just straight up gaslight him into believing his whole life has been his own creation. I mean, they seemed happier when he was unconscious anyway. There's no doubt that Squidward and SpongeBob genuinely care for one another, despite whatever Squidward claims throughout the show. And it totally makes sense that his half-interested parents would just make him someone else's problem, rather than dealing with his unpredictable hyperactivity. But maybe none of this really matters. Maybe it's just a cartoon about a sponge and a cranky octopus who, really don't get along. I don't know, man. I just like cartoons.